Hello, and welcome. It is my hope that by the time you reach me at this video, you have already taken my healthy hormones quiz to help you get to the bottom of why you are experiencing your painful periods, and to help you find out what kind of tests you can be asking your medical practitioner for, your healthcare practitioner, your registered holistic nutritionist for, so that you can figure out what's actually going on inside your body and start to take appropriate steps that are actually going to target those issues instead of just kind of trying to guess at what's going on. If you haven't already taken my healthy hormones quiz and you do have painful periods that are ruining your life, I've linked the quiz down in the notes, so go check that out before continuing on this video. A lot of women that I talk to and a lot of women within my own clinic say that they have painful periods that are essentially ruining their lives because they miss so many days of work per month because they can't get out of their house because of their painful periods. They are on bottles and bottles of painkillers to help get rid of the pain for their periods, and they know that's not good for them. Not only that, but it costs a lot of money to keep yourself stocked in that amount of painkillers every month. Or they're finding that they're having to plan their lives around their menstrual cycle, so not going for like fun weekends away or making sure they're not on vacation at the time of their menstrual cycle, and so on. So if you haven't already gone ahead and taken that healthy hormones quiz, I've just linked it down below so that you can go ahead and take that quiz and find out what kind of tests you can be asking your healthcare practitioner, such as your registered holistic nutritionist, for, so that you can start to make tiny adjustments to your life to get to the bottom of those painful periods, because it is 100% possible to experience your menstrual cycle without significant amounts of pain. So you've already taken my healthy hormones quiz and you want to know what kinds of tests to ask for at the doctor's or from your healthcare practitioner. And knowing what kind of tests to ask for is super important, because there are different kinds of tests that can give you different information about your periods. Knowing what kinds of tests to ask for is super important because there are different kinds of tests that you can get that will tell you different things about your period. Now, typically, if you go to a conventional medicine setting and you ask your doctor about painful periods, they may order some tests. And these tests typically look at like the typical female hormone tests in your body. They'll look at your estrogen, they'll look at your follicle stimulating hormone, they'll look at your luteinizing hormone, they may look at your testosterone. And I'm not even willing to bet that they'll look at your cortisol. I have heard that certain doctors won't order cortisol tests unless they know that the patient is at risk for a heart attack, which is really interesting because cortisol runs a gamut on a lot of different things going on in the body. So to only measure cortisol if we think that the client or the patient is going to have a heart attack is a little bit bizarre. So that's only if the doctor decides to order some tests and if you really advocate for those tests. But chances are, in my experience and the experience of women within my own clinic, they have been given two things to help with their painful periods. The first one is to wait it out and use painkillers to help numb the pain. So typically they are prescribed with some kind of painkiller prescription, or they are told to make sure they're stocked up on Advil. They're given maybe some what can be viewed as holistic remedies, such as like a hot water bottle, etc. Or more conventionally, they're given birth control, because this has been proven, in air quotes, to reduce or eliminate painful periods. And the reason that this is proven, air quotes, to reduce or eliminate painful periods is because you're not actually having a true period in this case. When you bleed on a birth control pill or a contraceptive, you are having a withdrawal bleed. So that just basically means that you take away the synthetic hormones that you're taking via your pill every day. And because you take away those hormones immediately, you start to have a withdrawal bleed. So ladies, neither of these options are going to work for you if you actually want to reduce your pain during your periods, especially if you're kind of at the end of your rope. You're tired of having to make sure you're relying on Advil. You're tired of having to plan your life around your menstrual cycle. And you're tired of either being on birth control. Maybe you don't like the way that you feel on birth control, because birth control comes with its own set of side effects and symptoms, such as depression, lack of libido, and a whole host of other types of symptoms that maybe you don't want to be experiencing either. So it's quite possible that by the time you landed here, you're already experiencing this kind of feeling of like, I've had enough. I just want to get to the bottom of this once and for all. Somebody tell me what to do, right? And that's the point that we're at now, right? And that's the reason why I do what I do, because I don't believe that women should be constantly told to basically go away with their birth control or go away with their Advil to get rid of their painful periods. And it's really quite shocking what conventional medicine looks at a painful period as. And when you Google symptoms of painful period or causes of painful period, The only things that you're given are the more like advanced forms of a painful period, like endometriosis, fibroids, etc. But it doesn't really talk about any of the women that are experiencing painful periods and they don't have endometriosis or they don't have fibroids. And then, worse yet, when you get to treatment plans for painful periods, oftentimes the treatment plans only include oral contraceptives or painkillers. There's no, look at what you're eating in your body, look at the different hormone levels and try to adjust those hormone levels, look at the different types of exercise that you're doing. And all of these things are so, so important when you are considering how to eliminate the pain in your period. So I always like to say that the body sends out what it needs in like these whispers, and these whispers will get louder and louder until you're willing to listen to them. And chances are, again, if you've landed here today, you are at the end of that rope. Your whispers are turning into yells and you're starting to feel like you really need to do something about these painful periods, because if you don't, then you don't know how life will continue in this way. So I'm really happy that you're here, because it means that you're listening to these whispers and it means that we can really get started. So before I give you all the juicy details about what you're experiencing from the results of my quiz, let me go ahead and introduce myself. My name is Holly, and I'm a registered holistic nutritionist specializing in period pain and all things menstrual cycle. I came to this line of work because I myself once experienced like absolutely debilitating period pain, among other period problems. But one of the big ones was debilitating period pain. And I was offered no other solution other than painkillers when I was on my period or birth control. And thankfully for me and my body, I am super stubborn, and I was very keen to use natural remedies to help my body figure out what it needed to do, right? Help my body figure out where to find this balance. So very thankfully, I said no and decided to look into the natural way of healing my body and reducing the pain during my periods. To give you an indicator of what my periods were like, they were so painful that there were times where I had to have somebody drive me home from work. Because my period would come at work and it would just be so painful that I've actually had people drive me home from work. Like they drove my car home from work, somebody else followed them home, and then they went back to work. Other times they were so bad that people thought they needed to call an ambulance for me, because again, oddly enough, it often struck while I was at work. And so I'd be at work and I'd have to go to the break room and lie down on the couch and wait for it to pass. And there's been times where people have found me there and have thought they needed to call an ambulance because of how bad my period pain was. Now, I talk about how bad that is, and typically people would say, go ahead and get investigated for uterine fibroids or endometriosis. And I have neither of those things. So this period pain was purely about what was going on in my body, out with the most extreme medical versions of period pain. So this is period pain that people experience every month, and they think it's normal because society has normalized this amount of period pain. And so we have these women that sympathize, oh, I get horrible period pains too. I'll never forget the one time that I was at work and I was doubled over in my office, and my boss came along too and talked about a story about when she was younger and she had just started her job and she was on the bathroom floor of her work with painful periods. Society has normalized this pain, and that is not okay, because it is 100% possible to live without pain on your period. And if you have pain on your period, that is a sign that there is something we need to do in the body to help tone down either the inflammation, to help support something like the liver or the gut, to help support healthy hormone balance, which is a whole other topic in and of itself when we're talking about something called hormone balance, because it's different for everybody. But there are so many things that we can be doing in our bodies that need to be adjusted to get rid of that pain. And this is what we're going to talk about today. So at one point, I decided that enough was enough and I needed to actually figure out what was going on with my period. And I couldn't go on missing work. I couldn't go on having people drive me home from work because that was really embarrassing. I couldn't go on having my social life that was dictated by my menstrual cycle, not going out because I was afraid that the pain was going to strike, not planning a trip around when my period was going to be because I thought, what if my period comes while I'm on the trip? And unfortunately for me in this case, I also had irregular periods. And so it made it even worse because I was trying to plan my life, but not really be certain of when my period would come. Like I would have a general idea, but I wouldn't actually know. And so planning my life even became difficult in that way. So if you're experiencing or have experienced symptoms similar to what I'm describing here, I suggest that you work with somebody who's really knowledgeable in women's health and menstrual cycles so that you can get the support you need to reduce pain in your periods. If that person is your doctor and your doctor's super knowledgeable in women's health and menstrual cycles, and they are suggesting all of these holistic remedies of looking at what you're eating and tweaking all of the things in your bodies, and they're ordering like the gamut of tests to look at how your liver's functioning, how your gut's functioning, how your hormones are doing, then absolutely stick with that person, because they are going to be like a needle in a haystack. If you don't have somebody like that, I suggest that you search out somebody who works specifically in women's health and menstrual cycles, such as a registered holistic nutritionist, to help you reduce that pain in your period. Thankfully, I listened to the whispers from my body and I figured it out. And now I help women just like you and me figure out how to reduce the pain in their periods so that they can finally start enjoying their social lives again, worry-free. It was so liberating when I could finally go out and know that either my period was going to come or I was already on my period, and I wasn't going to suffer from absolutely debilitating pain while I was out, or while I was at work, etc. And the freedom that comes with that, that sense of liberation that comes with knowing that you're not going to have that kind of pain, is absolutely life-changing. And if you're at the beginning of this journey where you're really thinking like you're not sure of how to go about this, or you're not sure of if the changes you're going to make are going to be worth it in the long run, the only thing I can say to you is, A, get the support that you need from somebody that works specifically in women's health, somebody who knows what they're talking about with the menstrual cycle and can help you figure out what's going on in your body. But B, also have faith that it's going to work, because what's waiting on the other side of this for you is potentially life changing. And that needs to be held in the forefront for you as you navigate any type of like challenges or frustrations that you might experience on this journey. So back to the quiz. There are 4 sections that you needed to fill out. I want you to look at each category and look and see if there is any one category that had way more symptoms, like weighted down, than any other category. So for example, and when you fill out this quiz, we're just going to scroll down to the bottom of it here. On this page here, you had to put an X next to each symptom that you experience as part of your PCOS, and you add up your totals to the end of each category. So what you would have found is that you would have sat pretty heavily in one of these sections. So for example, when I think of my own menstrual cycle journey, I would have weighted heavily actually in 2 sections. The first section would have been section 1 here, with things like breast tenderness at ovulation. I still get that to a certain extent. And that to me is like an indicator of how my body is doing. So if I'm at around ovulation and my breasts are feeling super tender, then I know that there's some adjustments I need to make in my eating and the way that I'm doing things to help tone that down. I also had irregular periods. I had wicked migraines. Sometimes I would wake up a lot at night. I had severe PMS. And I actually said I had decreased sex drive for a little while, and then I had infertility. So I would have weighted really heavily in section 1 here. There's other sections here as well. The other one that I would have weighted heavily on was section 4. For a while, I had some facial hair. I lost a lot of hair on my head after my babies were born, which is normal to a certain extent after you have a child, but mine was like really, really really profound with the amount of hair that I lost. I had irregular periods. I had cysts on my ovaries. At times I had very heavy menstrual bleeding. I had spotting between periods, and they all represent different things going on in the body that can give us a hint as to what we need to be looking at further. So as we interpret the results, we're going to go down here to this chart, and this chart gives us a perfect explanation of what we need to be looking for, what we need to be asking for, and then, the next steps on, okay, this is what we think it is. These are the things that we're going to look for. So in section 1, again, like I said, this is one that I rated heavily on from the very beginning. And so this would be some kind of possible cause towards estrogen dominance or low progesterone. Both hormones are absolutely necessary for a regular and healthy menstrual cycle. And if either of these are out of whack, you're going to start to experience various signs and symptoms. So the things that you need to request from your doctor are things like an estrogen blood test with all 3 estrogens. You don't want them to test just one, like estradiol or estrone. You want them to test all 3. And you want to get a full thyroid panel. And by a full thyroid panel, what I'm talking about here is not just your T3 and your T4. You need to get your free T3, your free T4, your reverse T3. In addition to, I think that's it for now. So you would get all of those so that you can really see what's going on, because a lot of the women in my practice also suffer from something called subclinical hypothyroidism, which basically means that the test that your doctor typically runs for your thyroid is not detecting the hypothyroidism, but the hypothyroidism is there. So you want to get your full thyroid panel done. Again, that includes your T4, your T3, your free T3, your free T4, and your reverse T3. You want to get all of those things so that you can make sure that your thyroid is functioning properly. Tests to order. So the difference here between tests to request from your doctor and tests to order is that under the tests to order, they're not typically covered by, if you live in Ontario, OHIP. They're not typically covered by public medical schemes. So you may have to order these tests and pay for them privately, but I promise you that the investment is completely worth it, because they give such a comprehensive look at what's going on. So the test to order for estrogen dominance would be the Dutch test, paying attention to your androgens and your estrogen metabolism. Estrogen metabolism just means that we're looking at the way that your body is processing the estrogen, not just how much estrogen is in your body. And then also looking at a hair tissue mineral analysis to determine if there's any heavy metal overload or nutrient deficiencies going on in your body. And that's because if we have heavy metal overload or we have nutrient deficiencies, that usually means that estrogen is going to be pumped up. And that is because our body is stressed. Our body releases cortisol when it is feeling stressed. And as a result of the releasing cortisol, we actually produce more estrogen. The problem with that, and this is how we end up into the estrogen dominance, is that cortisol will compete with progesterone to bind to our cells. And what happens is cortisol is a little bit stronger and it's a little bit more quick to the punch. So cortisol binds first, leaving progesterone floating in the bloodstream unable to bond. And that results in lower progesterone levels getting into our cells. And so we have higher natural estrogen. Even if our body is just producing like normal amounts of estrogen, it's going to be a little bit higher because the progesterone isn't there to balance it out. Estrogen and progesterone balance each other out. They're kind of like BFFs. And if there isn't enough progesterone there, then the estrogen is going to creep higher and higher. And then we might even run into some problems about how the body is eliminating that excess estrogen. And this is why it's so important to look at the full system, right? Like we can look at these tests, and these tests can give us a really good indication of what's going on in your body. But as I've just explained there, it's like these puzzle pieces that all need to come and fit together. You need to be working with somebody who is going to look at the entire body and each and every system and how every system is interacting with each other in order to figure out what's going on and to make some changes to your lifestyle and diet to fix those issues and to synchronize all of these systems, right? So make sure that you're working with a healthcare professional that values that holistic properties of looking at all of the systems and how the systems are interplaying. We cannot treat these systems separately. You know, sometimes we go to the doctor and we're like, okay, we're going to be referred to an endocrinologist for our hormones, but then we're going to be referred to, a gut doctor to figure out what's going on in our gut. And then we're going to be referred to maybe a neurologist to figure out what's going on in our pituitary gland, because that's also part of this, right? But what actually needs to happen is you need to have somebody that's going to look at the whole system and take all these puzzle pieces and put them all together for you, right? So estrogen dominance comes with a variety of symptoms that you might want to be looking at. And I'll just name a few here. But again, I can't stress enough how important it is for you to be picking a practitioner who is knowledgeable and can also dedicate the time and support required to get you through this. Because 15-minute appointments every 6 weeks is not going to cut it. Okay, you want somebody who can order these tests for you, analyze your test results, build you a customized plan, and support you every step of the way. And if I give you one piece of advice today, it's to take these test names to a practitioner who can do all of these things for you. Have one central person that can do this for you, because we are dealing with the rest of your life here, and the results of these tests and the changes that you can make will change your life. They could absolutely change your life. And today you've taken that first step in drastically improving the quality of your life. So it's important to pick a practitioner that cares and supports you on a regular basis to help you get through that. Once a week, or not once a week, once every 6 weeks is not going to cut it. You need somebody who's going to be there for you, every couple of days to make sure that you've got the support that you need, but also to help monitor what you're doing, because some of these changes could end up being big and you need somebody that's going to be your support, that's going to be your confidant, but also somebody who is going to keep you accountable. So with estrogen specifically, we've talked a little bit about how estrogen and progesterone need to be like BFFs, and we need enough progesterone to keep estrogen in check. Now, what happens if you have excess estrogen floating around your body and we don't know what to do with it? Well, under normal circumstances, your body eliminates excess estrogen via your urine and your bowel movements. Your gut and your liver are also involved in these processes. So if either of these major organs are not functioning well, you might start to see some problems with your estrogen dominance. So if we go back to my case was that I had a really unbalanced gut. It was awful. I was experiencing symptoms such as constipation that I didn't know was constipation. So for example, I would only have a bowel movement like every other day or every 2 days. And that it had been like that for like my entire life. So I just thought it was normal. But it was actually chronic constipation. And that was a big part of my estrogen dominance. The other part of my estrogen dominance was the fact that my liver wasn't functioning properly. And that's because I had spent years consuming so much sugar and so much processed food that my liver was tapped out. So my liver and my gut needed a lot of support in order to get my estrogen dominance in check. Okay. Other causes of estrogen dominance include things like environmental estrogens, and these things are known as endocrine disruptors because we either inhale them, we consume them, or we put them on our skin, and they have the ability to impact our hormone production. Okay. And these are typically found in everyday products like plastics and pesticides, cosmetics. And the one for me that was huge was deodorant. When I found out that there could be environmental estrogens in my deodorant, I switched to the most natural form of deodorant I could, because that to me, I don't know why, but when I thought about like my underarm and like it feels like thin skin there. So in my head, I was like, oh, it's probably like really penetrating the skin there and causing these types of issues. That was way before I trained as a holistic nutritionist. That was just like the visual that went in my mind. I switched to the most natural form of deodorant I could find. So I know this sounds really overwhelming to get all of this information and think, okay, I've got to take care of my gut. I've got to take care of my liver. I've got to make sure that I don't have all these environmental estrogens. But that is why I keep coming back to this point of making sure you're working with someone who can walk you through making these changes to your life in a sustainable and non-overwhelming way. You want somebody who is going to be knowledgeable in these areas so that they can provide you with the appropriate direction. So estrogen dominance can also be caused by our stress. And like I said before, our stress hormone and cortisol is triggered in a number of ways in our bodies. And it's not just the typical, like, I'm so stressed state, like, oh, work is just so stressful, I'm so stressed. Cortisol is also released when we don't get adequate sleep, if our thyroid is out of whack, and even if we're consuming or watching too much negative or violent content. So especially with the negative and violent content, like I know so many people that love to watch like crime shows or murder mysteries late at night, and they really enjoy it. But the thing to remember is that the brain cannot distinguish between what is real and what we are watching just for entertainment. So if you're watching these scary, creepy shows before bedtime, this is going to trigger a stress response in your body. And one of the sections of this quiz actually talks about waking frequently at night and not being able to fall back asleep at night. So if you're waking a lot at night and you find that like your eyes just ping open and you're awake and all of a sudden your brain is running, there are typically 3 possible causes for this, and one of them is our good friend estrogen, but the other things are things like your blood sugar and your mineral levels. So again, you want to make sure that you're keeping your blood sugar and your mineral levels in check so that you can make sure that you're getting really great quality sleep. And again, you want to make sure that you're picking somebody who can look into these things for you and coach you on what it means to have balanced blood sugar and what it means to have great mineral levels, in addition to how you can decrease the excess estrogen going through your body if we find out that you're having estrogen dominance. In my program, Painless Period, we do talk about blood sugar a lot because blood sugar is going to be something that stays tried and true for the rest of your life. It's going to support you in not only eliminating the pain in your periods, but also in giving you more energy, reducing your brain fog, making sure you're getting great quality sleep at night, making sure you have a healthy and happy gut, etc. And the biggest change you'll probably see when you have blood sugar regulation is your energy levels. Like they just go through the roof. So inside painless period, I've had lots of women that have worked on their blood sugar levels and they can't believe the amount of transformation they feel, not only in the way that their period behaves, but also in other aspects of their life too. So hormone is not necessarily a bad hormone, and I don't want to paint her like a bad hormone. But when it's in excess in the body, she wants to basically have a rave. And if you remember a rave from like your early 20s, the result of it is just there's a giant mess all over the place, and the floor is sticky, and there's garbage everywhere, and it's just awful, right? And that's what estrogen would do in the body, right? She has this rave, and it creates this mess that then needs to be cleaned up. Diet and lifestyle contribute to estrogen dominance big time. So if we're talking about how to create a rave inside our body, diet and lifestyle do contribute. They either contribute to the rave or they make sure the rave doesn't happen, right? So alcohol consumption increases estrogen in the body as well as being overweight because our fat cells also produce estrogen. Now, this isn't any type of episode where we're fat shaming people or we're talking about how it's horrible to have excess weight, but the very scientific fact of the matter is that fat cells do produce estrogen, and if you do carry excess fat, then you are producing excess estrogen, and we need to be doing something to keep that estrogen down, to bring it back down within normal ranges. Okay, a diet low in fiber also means that estrogen will not be effectively eliminated from the body. Things like a highly processed diet, such as eating a lot of fast food, will contribute to this estrogen dominance, especially because the liver is having to work harder and harder. And remember, the liver is responsible in packaging up estrogen and basically escorting it out of the body. So we want to make sure that the liver has all of the things it needs to function optimally. So we're now at the point here of what can you do? You don't want to make any immediate changes right now because we want to be getting some testing in place, or at bare minimum, you want to find somebody that can take your symptoms, your diet, and your lifestyle into account and begin to create a custom series of changes or additions. Just making all these changes all willy-nilly could result in no improvement for you and could potentially make you more frustrated, could potentially give you more period dysfunction, and nobody wants more period problems. Okay, so get yourself a practitioner who can lend their expertise and help you make these changes. Inside my program, Painless Period, we will look at all of these things. We will look at the test orders that we can get in place for you. And while we're waiting for test results, we will look at the symptomology that you're experiencing, your current diet and lifestyle, your previous health history, and then we will start to work together to make some of these changes, in addition to starting to learn some of the really valuable knowledge and expertise you need as a woman to make sure that you are treating your body the way that it should be treated. And that also, like, you feel like you know your body like you should have known it all along. There's this big societal gap for women where we're not necessarily taught about our bodies. So there's like millions of women that are walking around the world not understanding their bodies. And I really believe that inside Painless Period, I'm teaching you what you should have known about your body all along. So I will teach you all of the concepts that you need to know to make sure that you are keeping your beautiful body in check and in balance. If you're interested in the program Painless Period, I suggest you go ahead and you send me a DM or you comment down below Painless Period so that I can get in touch with you and we can talk about whether or not the program Painless Period is a great fit for you. Next time I'm going to come back and I'm going to talk about how section 2 focuses on something in the body called prostaglandins. So if you feel like section 1 with estrogen dominance or potentially low progesterone did not particularly apply to you and you're more interested in section 2, we are looking at something called your prostaglandins, and I'm going to be back in my next episode to talk about that one. That's it for today. So go ahead and give this a like and a share so that more women can find out about all of the juicy details that they need to know about their own bodies so that they can start to know their own bodies like they should have known all along as well. If you know a woman that suffers from absolutely debilitating periods and she is ready for a natural change to occur, she is tired of relying on birth control, she is tired of relying on painkillers, and she wants her life back, go ahead and put her in contact with me so that we can start talking about the tests we can order for her to get her started on her painless period journey.